Hello. Before I actually get started talking about the lemurs of Madagascar, I thought I'd share with you some poetry which relates to the lemurs of Madagascar. I like to move it, move it. I like to move it, move it. I like to move it, move it. You like to move it. What makes us primates? The group that spans from the lemurs of Madagascar to baboons to chimps and of course humans. Well, we all have a common feature which sets us apart from other animals which we all inherited from a single common ancestor. It's the mutation of hands with grasping fingers and opposable thumbs. This feature is used in humans for grasping onto objects, and which is therefore useful for making tools and making life much easier for humans. But this mutation was originally found to be useful in primates for grasping onto branches and moving through the canopy. Of all the primates alive today, lemurs bear the closest resemblance to the early primates in the fossil record dating back to the Eocene epoch, with fully formed snouts rather than flattened faces like you would find in most monkeys and apes. One could easily assume that the lemurs were already present on Madagascar when the island was forming, but Madagascar formed during the Mesozoic era, although it's thought that lemurs first evolved during the Eocene, which was after that. So how could the lemurs have made it from mainland Africa to Madagascar? One theory as to how they did this was by floating across the Mozambique Channel on rafts of vegetation. Now, of course, this sounds ridiculous, especially when you consider that it would take a month to float from mainland Africa across the Mozambique Channel to Madagascar, and also remembering that this would all be done without food or fresh water. But this has been justified by a behavioural trait found in some small mammals, including a few species of lemur.
They can enter a state called torpor, which is akin to hibernation.
As the early lemurs were floating across the Mozambique Channel, they would have had to shut off most of their bodily functions and therefore not require great amounts of food or water to survive this great trip. And this is something that would only be done by animals in the most dire circumstances to survive. Being the only primates on Madagascar, these lemurs were able to quickly spread across the islands and diversify to take up several vacant niches on Madagascar. There were a few species that I encountered in the Mahamavo forest, but the most famous lemur was not included among them, as the ring-tailed lemur is only found in the south of Madagascar. The extraordinary striped tail of this species is quite conspicuous, so why should it evolve? Well, like most primates, the ring-tailed lemur is a social animal. They live in social groupings led by females. And unlike most lemurs, the ring-tailed lemur spends quite a bit of time actually moving about on the ground. So this is when the tail comes into play. When moving through long grass, the ring-tailed lemur can use this very distinctive tail to sort of signal to one another and help to keep the group together. One niche that's been taken is that of the nocturnal frugivore. This is the mouse lemur. It's the smallest genus of primate in the world, and they're small and nimble enough to make it through the denser parts of the forest where other lemurs would seldom be found. And they're very clearly adapted to a nocturnal lifestyle by having particularly large eyes to take in as much light as they possibly can.
Although rather excitingly, it seems that I may have to go back a bit on one of my earlier comments. See, on this expedition, for the first time, ever recorded at least, a mouse lemur wasn't being a nocturnal frugivore. It's here been photographed actually eating the carcass of a chameleon. It's perhaps more likely that it's simply scavenging and finding an extra source of protein, but at least it's breaking that niche and actually doing something not observed before, which is quite interesting.
My favourite species of lemur is the Sifaka. It's a member of the Indriid family, that which contains the larger species of lemur. And the Sifaka is best known for a sort of jumping walk, but this isn't that commonly observed. And that's because they seldom come down to the ground. You see, they've evolved to move in a way which is only sensible in the canopy. So they would only ever do this jumping walk when they have to cross a great open space in order to get from one forested area to another. What was that? You wanted to see footage of the Sifakas? Here you go. It's easy to see why these charismatic animals are at the forefront of anything to do with Madagascar. So charming and almost childlike, but not quite human enough. When Marco Polo first visited Madagascar and encountered the lemurs of the island, he described them as being like dog-faced children. He definitely knows we're here and just not even that far away from him. This kind, the Sifaka, is seldom seen on the ground, but when they do, they are so well adapted to climbing and leaping through the trees that they can only ambulate on the ground by doing a sort of sideways jump. And they will only leave the canopy when they believe that they absolutely have to in order to get to a new bit of forest. Lemurs are a remarkable group of primates. Not quite monkey, but they are the only group of primates native to Madagascar due to its islandization which occurred during the late Cretaceous, and therefore no other primates were able to access it until the humans came over thousands of years ago and encountered the lemurs which had been evolving for so many millions of years. Now, it's all thanks to Operation Wallacea that I was able to go on an expedition like this as a research assistant and see all these amazing animals. Over the course of this trilogy, I've shown you a variety of animals, but this hardly covers just how many creatures there are on the island of Madagascar. From the bombardier beetles to the zonosaurus and the hissing cockroaches, the nightjars, the civets, the pentatomoids, the magpie robins, flycatchers, drongos, langerhans snakes, vasa parrots, ticadina frogs, and the giant fruit bats. The life of Madagascar was a true wonder to behold.